Every country that bids for the World Cup hears the same sales pitch: billions in tourism revenue, thousands of new jobs, world-class infrastructure, a legacy that lasts generations. The reality is almost always the opposite. Host nations consistently overspend, underperform on their projections, and are left with billions in debt and stadiums that nobody uses. This is the story of where the money actually goes. FIFA is a non-profit organization registered in Zurich, Switzerland. It employs about 900 people. It owns no stadiums. It builds no infrastructure. And every 4 years, it generates more revenue than most countries on Earth. The 2022 Qatar World Cup generated $7.5 billion in revenue for FIFA, the highest ever for a single tournament. 94% of that revenue came from just one source, selling television and sponsorship rights. Broadcasters pay hundreds of millions for the right to show the games. Sponsors pay for logo placement. FIFA collects it all. The host country receives none of it. The host nation builds the stadiums, the hotels, the roads, the airports. FIFA sets the requirements. The host country pays the bill. FIFA's contribution to the whole arrangement is the event itself and the prestige of being chosen. Qatar spent an estimated $300 billion to host 64 football matches. That is not a typo. $300 billion for a tournament that lasted 29 days, 8 entirely new stadiums, a new metro system, 7 new hotels, a new city. Lusail City, built from scratch in the desert to host the World Cup final, took 12 years to construct and was designed to eventually hold 200,000 people. Qatar also air-conditioned its outdoor stadiums because it is 40 degrees Celsius in Qatar in November, and FIFA had insisted on holding the tournament during the Northern Hemisphere's traditional football season. The Lusail Stadium alone cost $4.7 billion. It was used for 10 matches during the tournament. It will host roughly one major match per year going forward. An estimated 6,500 migrant workers died during Qatar's decade-long construction period. Qatar disputes the figure. Independent verification has been nearly impossible because access to investigators was restricted. Brazil is a different kind of cautionary tale. Brazil spent $15 billion on its 2014 World Cup. The stadiums are now mostly empty. The Arena Amazonia in Manaus cost $300 million to build. It was constructed in a rainforest city that has no professional football club capable of filling it. It now hosts amateur matches and the occasional concert. The Estadio Nacional Mané Garrincha in Brasilia cost $900 million. Brasilia's football teams were too small to fill a stadium of that size. It has been used as a bus depot. The maintenance costs, roughly $250,000 per month, are paid by the Brazilian government. South Africa built 5 new stadiums for the 2010 World Cup. The Cape Town Stadium cost $600 million and was designed with a major European club in mind. That club never came. South Africa has no domestic team capable of consistently filling a 64,000-seat arena. The stadium sits largely empty. Looking at the history, the pattern is clear. The United States hosted in 1994 for $500 million, the last World Cup to come in under budget. South Africa in 2010 overspent by 3 times its projections and left stadiums that nobody uses. Brazil in 2014 spent $15 billion and triggered nationwide protests over inequality. Russia in 2018 spent $14 billion, and several of its stadiums are now running at a loss. And Qatar in 2022 spent $300 billion, 20 times the previous record. So who actually makes money? The sponsors do. Adidas, Coca-Cola, and Visa each pay around $200 million per sponsorship cycle. They get global brand exposure measured in hundreds of billions of impressions. Adidas has been sponsoring the World Cup since 1970 because the return on investment consistently justifies the cost. The broadcasters do. Fox Sports paid $400 million for United States broadcast rights through 2026. The 2018 World Cup final drew 517 million simultaneous viewers globally. No other live event on Earth comes close. A 30-second advertisement during the final sold for $1.5 million in the United States alone. The betting industry does. The 2022 World Cup generated an estimated $35 billion in legal sports bets globally. The illegal market is estimated to be 3 to 5 times larger. And the tournament creates millionaires overnight through player transfers. Kylian Mbappe's breakout 2018 World Cup led directly to transfer fee discussions that reached $200 million. Neymar's performances at multiple tournaments drove his record $263 million move to PSG, the most expensive transfer in football history. A single tournament can multiply a player's market value by 10 in 30 days. Then there is the corruption layer. In 2015, the United States Department of Justice indicted 14 FIFA officials on charges of racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. Officials had accepted more than $150 million in bribes in exchange for awarding hosting rights and broadcast contracts over 24 years. Qatar's 2022 hosting bid has never been fully exonerated. Leaked documents alleged improper payments and benefits given to voting officials before the 2010 vote that awarded Qatar the tournament. FIFA published only a summary of the investigation. The full report has never been officially released. The 2026 World Cup will be held across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It will be the biggest tournament in history. 48 teams, 16 host cities, 104 matches. Most venues will use existing NFL and MLS stadiums, which should theoretically reduce construction costs. But city-level expenses are already rising. Each host city must upgrade transport links, build fan zones, secure perimeters, and fund major police operations. New York City has estimated its local operational costs at over $50 million just for city-level expenses. The federal contribution is separate. Tournament organizers project a $5 billion economic impact for the United States. Independent economists are skeptical. Brazil projected a $30 billion gain from its 2014 tournament. The actual net impact after accounting for the crowding out of regular tourism, infrastructure cost overruns, and years of debt servicing was deeply negative. Why do countries keep bidding if it always costs more than it earns? Because the World Cup is not fundamentally an economic event. It is a political one. Qatar used the 2022 tournament to reframe its global image away from human rights concerns toward a modernizing, ambitious Gulf state. Russia used 2018 the same way. Foreign visitors who expected hostility found welcoming people, efficient transport, and modern cities. Russia's approval ratings in international surveys ticked upward after the tournament. 2 years later, it invaded Ukraine. Some countries do use World Cups to accelerate infrastructure they actually needed. South Korea and Japan's shared 2002 tournament triggered upgrades that both countries had been planning for years. South Korea's high-speed rail program was accelerated. Those investments have arguably delivered real long-term returns. But hosting an international tournament creates artificial deadlines that inflate costs. The same infrastructure built without tournament pressure would likely have cost 30 to 50% less. Qatar spent $300 billion to host the World Cup. The same amount could fund the United Nations' entire global humanitarian budget for the next 75 years, or build 3,000 hospitals, or eliminate the national debt of 70 countries. None of that happened. 64 football games were played instead. Some of them were brilliant. Argentina won. Lionel Messi finally got his World Cup medal, and then the cameras left, and Qatar was left with 8 stadiums, a city that nobody lives in, and $300 billion less in its sovereign wealth fund. FIFA will do it again in 2026, and 2030, and 2034. Saudi Arabia has already won the right to host 2034. Estimates for the cost are already reaching $50 billion. FIFA's revenue will be higher than ever. The host will pay every bill. FIFA's projected revenue from the 2026 World Cup is $11 billion. The host country's costs are not included in that figure. The pattern does not change. The only question is who pays next.